Okay, you guys are going to start by making a new project in Photopea. And we're going to just say create. I have a white background. I would like you to press D for default, and that sets your foreground and background colors to the letter D. So you press D for default, and then if you press X, it swivels back and forth between foreground and background, so you can leave white as your foreground color. Okay, so we made a new document, we made it white, and then we made the foreground colors black and white, and the foreground color is white. What you're going to do is you're going to open the image that you saved. If you haven't saved an image, you want to find like a nice scenery image, sunset, or anything that goes with the words you're going to put. So I'm going to go File, Open and Place, and I'm going to take one of my scenery pictures, right? So I'm going to take this one. This is actually shipwrecks that are out east. It's an old ship that was left there. So I'm going to stretch it out. And this distorts the picture a little bit, so you might want to stretch it out. And you can hold shift when you stretch things out so that you don't lose the proportions. But I'm going to put this here. Then I hit the check mark. Now this picture is now going to be called background. All right, so I'm going to double click on it and I'm going to call it background. So I don't really need this one anymore. Or I could just hide it, I'll just leave it. But this is my real background. Then I'm going to make a copy of this picture I just made. So how do we do that? You've done this a bunch. Command J if you're on the Mac, or Control J on your Chromebook. That made a copy of this. Now I'm on the top layer, and I'm going to go to my type tool. And I'm going to type summer. Now, I could see my text is super tiny. I need it to be bigger. So I'm going to highlight it. I'm just pressing and dragging. Highlighting it, I can change the text and make it bigger here. I could plug in a number, right? I could drag it, or I could just plug in a number. Make it bigger. Oop. And if that's not going to work, you go to Edit, Free Transform, and you could stretch your text out. You want to use a text that's kind of fat, so I'm just going to stick with this, but I could use a wider text, like a thicker text, because the image is going to go in here. Okay. What I also need to do is I need to pull this down. I need to go on my top layer, and the top layer, it says background copy. We're going to call that layer 1. Then I need to go and make a color fill layer. So you go down here to the adjustment layer, and it's going to be called solid color in Photoshop, but in Photopea it's color fill. And we're going to fill it with white. So click on the white and say OK. Then you're going to drag the color fill down, and you have to pay attention to your layer order. Now, where am I getting this information from? How am I getting all of this? Well, I have the lesson written out for you guys, all right? And the stacking order is important. So I always call it like a sandwich. I'm going to hide this one. You have to have the pictures on the top and the bottom, and then the text and the color filler in between. So when I'm on layer 1, the top layer, I'm going to go to the word layer, and I'm going to go to clipping mask. And if it works, I have my layers in the right order. If it doesn't, I have to make a change. Okay, so that didn't work. So I'm going to go back up. I'm going to move the color fill that layer down. I'm going to go layer, text, color fill, background. So let's try this again. Layer, clipping mask. Now that worked. So it's a simple change of making sure my layer order is correct. So you can work with, it's like a sandwich. You sandwich the image on the top and the bottom, and then you have your text and you have a color fill layer. Now if I double click here on my color fill layer, I could change the color of the background, which is kind of neat. If I want to use a color from the slider, I could just go here. If I want to use a color from my picture, I can actually click inside my picture and use a color from there, which is helpful. Like if I want it to be that color, and that's changing the color fill layer. So what color do I want? I don't, well, I kind of do like that. This one. Okay, I'm going to take this one and say okay. So now it says summer. Now I can see my text is too far over to the side. So I can get rid of this original background layer by dumping it. And this is really what you have. Background, layer 1. So it's really bottom layer, top layer. You have a color fill layer and whatever your text is. So if you ever want to edit the text, you go back to the text, you go to your type tool, you highlight it. I can now make it smaller by going to edit, free transform. And notice we use that a lot, right? Oh, I'm spinning. We use free transform a lot. And where I move, what part of the picture is showing. So I might want the text centered. I could say check. If I want to move the image down, I could go to that layer, go to the move tool, and move the back image layer down. Right? If I want to add a stroke to the text, again, you go to the type layer, type tool, highlight, and you should be able to add a stroke to this. Edit. We'll go here. That's my stroke. Effects. Here it is, sorry. EFF, effects. So stroke. In Photoshop, it's FX. So you can make stroke on the outside of your letters. You can make it bigger. This is what we saw in the video yesterday. You can make it bigger or smaller. You could do a, I'm going to say okay to that. I'm going to leave that like that, but I want to put a shadow here. So I'm going to do a drop shadow. You see that? If you just click, it gives a drop shadow. If you want to change the size, see here it's on the stroke still. If I double click on where it says drop shadow, I can adjust. So I'm going to show you guys how to do this in class. Remember, you can always click on the color fill and change it to whatever you want. And we'll say okay, and that's it. So I'd like you guys to do 3 of these with whatever 3 words you want.